All right. So, as this is in the title, today we're going to talk about forgiveness and stress and why it's important to forgive people. But first, you must know that God always forgives us whenever we do something wrong. And there isn't a moment where He doesn't forgive us. So just keep that in mind. And forgiving people, like, why you should forgive others, even if you won't, like, verbally, or like, even if the other person won't ever like know you're forgiving them. They don't have to. You just need to know, do you forgive them as well? Do you blame anything that happened between you and this person? If so, do you forgive yourself? And like earlier, how I said God forgives us, God does forgive you for you blaming yourself. He forgives the other person. He forgives you. Like, He has. But it's this is the part where you come in. Do you meet Him? Do you meet God where you agree that you forgive? Yes, it may still hurt, but don't let the pain and the hurt get between you and your relationship with God. Forgiving someone, it could be difficult, but at the same time, it is doable. It may take some time, but by acknowledging that you need to forgive someone, that is a step in the right direction. And remember, that person could also be yourself. Um, Also, sorry, the train of thought went to a different station. Um, let's see. When you're forgiving someone, a lot of emotions could come up, meaning you didn't feel your emotions when it occurred, or just new ones came up. Be sure to feel those emotions. Be sure to have like a support group, that like people you could contact if you're having a rough night, and ask them to, like, hey, I'm having a rough night, can you pray for me? And like, that's it. um Simple as that. I know it sounds simple, and then you're like, oh, but I don't want to distract anyone, um or disturb anyone. Your support group is there for you, and these are people that you trust. And trust me, if these people agreed to help you whenever you are feeling down, and you text them, hey, I don't feel so great right now, can you pray for me? You are not being a burden to those people or to that individual, because that's what they agreed to do. They agreed to help you. And that by helping you, they could just pray for you. Um, and yeah, especially when those people agreed to support you and to help you, you're not being a burden to them. And I know that's part of a mindset thing, but keep asking God of how He could help you with that feeling if you do feel like that. What's another thing? Forgiving someone. I forgave someone. Um, so somebody left, and I forgave them pretty quickly. Um, and a part of that I didn't realize until I look back on it, is that that moment when that person left, um, my mom started bringing me to religious conferences, so my relationship with God grew, even though, like, at that age, I didn't really quite understand why I was going to these conferences, but I'm glad that she did, because it did help me become the person who I am today. So I did forgive that person, but like 3 years later, I realized I didn't forgive myself, for blaming myself for everything that occurred with this individual, good and bad. Um, and so, because I didn't realize that I realized I was blaming myself, but I didn't realize I had to forgive myself. So when I realized that a lot of emotions came, I was like blasted with emotions of realizing, oh my gosh, I blamed myself for things that I didn't have any control over. And I had to realize that I didn't have control over those things. Those weren't things if I did something else different, yeah, maybe those things could have turned out differently, but the past is how it's written. It's permanently written like that, and there's nothing I could really do about it. And I have to learn to accept that, hey, stop imagining what could have happened because it cannot be rewritten. And taken, not taken, that's I had to forgive myself for all the blame I caused on myself and the fake scenarios I put in my head that could have happened if I did one thing different or if I did that thing different. Don't think that because that just puts so much stress onto yourself and it's not necessary and it gets in the way of forgiving. Forgiveness is an action of love. Not everyone forgives, but those who do, um, those who forgive display that it's not just about themselves, I guess. I have this idea, but I don't know. It's not quite formed in my head. Um, so I learned how to forgive myself. I just realized I never finished the story. I learned how to forgive myself, and by doing that, I first acknowledged that God forgave me, and I had to ask myself, do I believe that God forgave me? Because I'm aware that He did, but do I acknowledge that? Like, do I agree with God that I'm forgiven? And that was a big thing for me. Because, yes, right now I do forgive myself, but when I was in that forgiving process of myself, some days I would say yes, some days I would say no, just depending on the memories that popped into my head because I recalled so many things, so many events. And yeah. And when I was blaming myself during that time, I put on a lot of stress onto myself because of the fake scenarios and the what ifs. And I realized that I cannot keep on thinking like that because it would just damage me more and it may limit myself in the future from opportunities that I could possibly be doing. And so I learned that one, had to acknowledge that that He did forgive me and that He will forgive me for other things, but especially for that event because that really took a toll on myself. And then I had to meet God and had to agree with Him. Yes, He did forgive me. And then for me in that process, that's how I personally acknowledge that I forgave myself. So yeah. Um, but it could be different for other people. That's just how it happened with me. And by forgiving people, you may still feel hurt. Um, I actually don't feel as much pain thinking back onto that specific memory with that person anymore. I don't feel the pain. I don't even feel the blame anymore for what occurred. I don't imagine scenarios. Nothing from that memory hurts me anymore. But then again, this thing all started around 4 years ago. Yeah. I would say 4 or 3-ish, give or take. And yeah. I would say last year I would not feel like this, but thinking back on it, I'm not hurt by it. I'm glad that I learned from it and that I learned to forgive before I was taught, hey, you need to forgive people, because I was recently taught that. And first, this memory came up of me forgiving this person and myself, but then like two other memories came up, and I'm just like, wow, I never forgave those people or myself um, for being angry with them. And so I'm learning to work on that, because those are things that one of them has been with me for like a while, and I just didn't realize that, hey, I need to forgive this person. Um, while like this other person, they just haven't came to my mind, so I just didn't like recall, oh, hey, I have to remember, I have to work on forgiving them. But sometimes that's more difficult than others. Like the one person I think it's going to take some time to forgive, while the other individual, it's actually quite easy. Now I'm just working on, once again, forgiving myself for all the blame I put onto myself. I just realized I put a lot of blame onto myself that isn't necessary, but nobody tells you that, hey, well, I guess people they do tell you not to blame yourself, but they never say, how do you stop blaming yourself? And honestly, for me, I just wrote down everything. So I wrote down everything to the one individual. I never send it to the person. I probably have it somewhere. Um, but you could write things down. Oh, right. Sorry. I had this thing next to me. I almost totally forgot to mention it. So when you're stressed out, or when you don't know what to do, or you want to forgive someone but you don't know what to do, and you just want to get everything out of your head, write it down on a piece of paper and then rip the piece of paper apart. So like for my PE class, I actually had to do this today, for an assignment of like, some fell, but not all, which I'm glad, because I would have had to pick that up. We had to do this for our assignment. It was just write everything we're stressed out about and then rip up the piece of paper. And hold up, this thing's annoying me. I had so much satisfaction when I was ripping up the piece of paper, because I took out all my anger and how I felt and just everything out on this one piece of paper. And I'm glad, because it reminds me of the videos on TikTok of how people would get a plain plate and a Sharpie and just write all over it and then smash it against the ground. And I'm just like, it's like the same thing except less dangerous. So yeah. So I suggest just finding a piece of paper, any size, and just write it. It could be front and back, and just rip it apart, because for me, it at least helped releasing that anger and everything I felt at the moment, releasing the pressure within me. So if it helped for me, maybe it could help for you. Don't At least try it out before you say, no, it's not for me. Because if you say, no, it's not for me before even trying it, then that's not a true statement. All right. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining me here today, and be sure to subscribe for more videos and hit the notification bell to know when I'm going live, and be sure to leave a thumbs up and a comment of what was your takeaway from this video. All right. So see y'all next time. Bye, y'all.